when it comes to blockchain, crypto, a lot of people are still, I guess the perception of it is still very much like, oh, it must be a scam or something.
So the idea is that when you think about the internet is comprised of many things called protocols. A protocol is a set of instructions, right? So think about it this way. When you visit a website using your web browser, how does the web browser know how to display the website in a particular way, right? It's all based on a set of instructions that everyone has sort of agreed upon. So that means if you're using Chrome or using Safari or using another web browser, the web pages will generally render the same. And that's all based on these sets of protocols. And then obviously there's programming languages and other layers to the whole system. And what's really cool about the internet is that it's permissionless. You can install a web browser on your computer, a web server on your computer, and you can build a website and you can host it off an IP address. And you don't need to ask anyone's permission to do that. And that's fundamental to how the internet works. If you think about how the traditional finance system works, it's not permissionless, right? So you need to go and ask for a bank's permission, ask for a credit card company's permission if you want to participate in the financial system. And as a result, in our world, there's many people who are unbanked or underbanked or just not able to participate for one reason or another in the global financial system. So the crypto industry was founded coming out of the 2008 financial crisis, where there was a deep loss of trust in the traditional finance system. And so the original idea for Bitcoin was you could download free software from the internet, you didn't have to ask for anyone's permission, and you could run it on your everyday PC, and you could mine Bitcoins. And by mining Bitcoins, you were also helping to secure the network. And the idea is remarkable because you have a new concept of a financial system that is based on a piece of software that's open source. So anyone can see the rules. Everyone can see the rules of this protocol. They can see that there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoins emitted over a long period of time. They can see exactly how the security model works and how consensus works. And that's really powerful because if you think about how traditional finance works, it's very opaque. You don't really know exactly how the finance system works. And sometimes you even ask government officials, there are all these kind of hilarious interviews out there where they're interviewing bureaucrats or other people related to traditional finance, and they can't even describe how it works. You'll see interviews with people who run central banks, and they'll say, well, where does the money come from? And sometimes they'll be caught off guard and say, oh, we just print it. Right?
That's true, though.
Yeah, of course. And you start to sit there and you say, I don't get to vote on the supply of the dollar, right? So where do these dollars come from? They just keep printing them. What's the end result? So if you had $100,000 in 2020 to spend, to have the exact same purchasing power here in 2024, you need $185,000. And people feel it. You go to the grocery store and you buy eggs, you buy milk, you buy whatever for your family just to feed your family, and you can feel it. You can see the rising cost, and it makes things very difficult for people all over the world. And so that's the kind of thinking that resulted in the creation of Bitcoin is, well, why is that? Why do we want to continue to do it that way? This idea of fiat currencies and trusting governments with the operation and the management of financial systems. And what's happened over the course of time is, so Bitcoin started as this revolution. You could download free software from the internet, no permission, install it on your PC and mine Bitcoins, and you could participate, and anyone could participate. Now back then, very few people knew about it, right? So participation was limited just on the basis of very few people knowing, right? What's happened in the crypto industry over time is that it has actually become increasingly permissioned. Another major challenge with blockchain projects is that their blockchain protocols have no confidentiality features. So basically what that means is if I send you value on using the protocol, or you send me value using the protocol, Anybody can see that transaction. They can see your balance. Did you know that you can Google someone's Ethereum address and get the balance of their wallet? Could you imagine?
Right.
Can you do that with your bank account?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can Google anyone's Bitcoin wallet address and get their balance. That is crazy. That doesn't make any sense. That's not how the real world works, right? So even though we are moving in a direction where there's a lot more surveillance, a lot less privacy, I think that's like generally true. As it relates to money and value, people are pretty private.
Yeah,
And
because like people will come after you if they know how
course.
much you make.
Of course, it's a security risk for people. It's a scarlet letter issue. What I do with my own money, as long as it's legal in my jurisdiction, why is that anyone's business?
So I guess there's that fine balance because you do want to be transparent because the whole idea of blockchain is to be transparent so that people know that there's like no fraudulent transactions going on and things like that.
That's a misconception.
Interesting. Yep. Could
Okay.
you elaborate on
So
that?
yeah, so actually, if you read the original Bitcoin paper, there's a section on privacy. So Satoshi Nakamoto actually discussed the importance of privacy, and there's a meaningful conversation on Bitcoin Talk between Satoshi and other contributors and interested parties in Bitcoin discussing the importance of privacy and whether Bitcoin privacy is sufficient. And what's happened is from that time forward is all the modern day protocols have basically abandoned efforts with regards to privacy, or most have. And the end result is this very strange world where now you have this, particular view that, oh, blockchains are supposed to be transparent. It's like, well, no, that's an implementation decision. That's a design choice to say that, oh, the system is going to be default public or default surveillance versus default confidential. But again,
I'm not the only one who's thinking this way, right?
I agree.
Because that's what I hear everyone saying, that finally we have some transparency because everything has been so opaque.
Right. So what I would say there is I would go back to first principles thinking.
Right.
Okay. So as a product person, I always think about meeting people where they are.
Yep.
So when I think about it from that point of view, tell me the online tool that I can use to see your bank balance right now. Tell me the online tool. Tell me the online tool that I can use to see your credit card transaction history right now in real time, and that I can use to track it not only past but also future for all time without even asking your permission. Yeah. Tell me the tool that I can use to spy on every single manner and approach and way that you choose to spend your money.
Oh, governments will love that.
Well, interesting that you say that, but now think about it from a business point of view. Is there a company out there that wants everyone to know, what customer A pays versus customer B or customer C? Could you imagine a world where, let's use an airline as an example. Airlines have loyalty programs. Every airline has a loyalty program, right? And they are very careful about, revealing who is, has different status in the airline. You go to the airport, and even when they show the upgrade, thing, they don't put the person's full name. No. They'll put like first initial, last name maybe, or first part of the name. They obfuscate. Because why? Could you imagine the disaster if Delta Airlines published publicly all their diamond medallion list and the field day that American Airlines and United Airlines, their direct competitors, would have? Oh, yeah. So I would argue that systems that don't have confidentiality features are actually incompatible with capitalism. How do you run a business? Yep. It doesn't make any sense. So I think that there certainly is a group of people that believe that transparency is great. And I think that the way the system should work is it should be default confidential, but the person should be able to reveal if they want to. And there's lots of good reasons for this. For example, a nonprofit. A nonprofit may want to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, here's the donations we've received, and here's how we've spent the money on behalf of the charity or the cause, right? So there are examples where it makes a lot of sense, but broadly speaking, that's not how the traditional finance system works. And I'm not convinced that having it be default transparent is better. I actually think it's a step in the wrong direction. So what's happened in our industry is when you want to participate in a new blockchain protocol, you have to ask for someone's permission first. So let's pretend like you want to buy some Ethereum. How do you buy Ethereum? Let's pretend like you have nothing. You have no account at an exchange, you have no wallet, you have nothing. It is very difficult to buy Ethereum from scratch. It's very difficult. You have to go and open an account at an exchange. You have to KYC. You have to provide your government identity. You have to set up your bank account or put in your credit card information. You then have to buy. You have to move your fiat currency to the system. It's many steps. Yeah. It's complicated. And you're asking for permission. Now contrast that with what you had when Bitcoin first launched. You just download the software. You download the software and you mine on your computer. Yeah. That was how the whole industry started. We think it's mission critical to get back to that. We should get back to that. And so today in the blockchain industry, how does someone who's a part of Gen Z or a Gen Alpha person participate in this world? Well, the expectation from the industry's point of view is they should just buy existing tokens. They shouldn't be ground floor for anything. They should buy existing tokens.
And a lot of them do, to be fair.
Fewer than you may think.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so at least the data that I've seen, and admittedly some of it is anecdotal, but I don't think you have the level of participation from Gen Z and Gen Alpha than people in the industry would lead you to believe. If you go to other blockchain conferences, look into it. Just look around and people watch and see who is here. It's not the younger generation. Why? I think that it's hard for them to participate. So if you think about it, we already just discussed how difficult it is to set up an account with an exchange.
Yep.
And the number of steps it takes to actually get into the industry. Well, what if all of those amazing people who are part of next generations, up and coming generations, could just download software for free from the internet and be a part of something from the ground floor, be a part of something from day one? We think that's really cool.
Maybe one of the arguments that I could potentially steal, man, is that, maybe because if you're trying to do something illegal, or you're just one of the bad actors,
yeah,
and they try to access. I mean, that's why they wouldn't. They always ask me, even like at a traditional bank, are you dealing with anyone from Iran or something like that? When we need to send the money to our reporters.
Yeah.
But they're like, you can't even transact with those people.
Totally.
And I'm like, well, so clearly that's very frustrating.
Of course.
Because we have reporters that we train, like citizen reporters, and then just because they happen to live in, like Afghanistan, Iran, or like a Turkey or something.
Yeah.
But then I could also understand why at that sort of like a centralized governmental or institutional banking level,
yeah,
they have to take into account that risk.
Of course.
That somebody could be financing terrorism or something, right?
Of course. So, from my point of view as a contributor to the Tari project, I think compliance with these regulations is super important. Like, it's very, very, very important. And a lot of these sorts of questions, I think, have already been answered pretty well around Bitcoin, right? Because anyone can be a Bitcoin miner, and you end up with a similar sort of set of questions. And so the way that governments around the world have adapted is they've said, okay, well, you might have some Bitcoin, but if you really want to do anything with that Bitcoin, like, for example, turn it into US dollars or spend it in some way, then yeah, you're going to have to go and set up an account with some sort of on-ramp or off-ramp, and then that organization is responsible for ensuring that you are compliant, with whatever the jurisdiction's rules and regulations are. And at least I can just speak for myself personally. I think that's fine. I think that's totally fine, and I think it's really important that every country be able to enforce rule of law, however they've defined rule of law, right? I think that's like super important.
There are a lot of voices in this industry that agree with that type of man, if we let this play out, it's almost like looking at an episode of Black Mirror.
100%.
But worse.
Worse. Yeah.
But like realistically, do a lot of people agree with you that if we let this play out, that's the future that we could end up having?
There definitely are people out there who would agree with all of the points that I'm making, but it's fewer than you may think. And I think a lot of it has to do with, again, people's, what we call in the industry, bag bias. If I have a huge number of tokens for a particular protocol that doesn't support these features, I just want my number to go up. I want to make more money. I've already purchased the car and the yacht and the home and have decided who my trophy wife is going to be on the basis of the number changing, right? And so I think that is blinding for people, and they start to ignore some of these challenges because it's not their problem. One of the most common responses to this kind of discussion, this discourse in the industry is, well, Naveen, what do you have to hide? Right? And my response to that always is, well, it's not about that. It's not about that. It's about the fact that in most countries, the legislators, the lawmakers in any given country will continuously pass new laws, but they don't take laws off the books.
I think that is, I used to be a former lawyer.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and I happen to know that it literally just piles on. They never get rid of it.
Yeah.
So that's why the legislation, it gets thicker and thicker every year.
Yeah. So there's a saying, that at the end of the day, almost anything you're doing is breaking some law somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's wild. I think that's wild to think about because, it just means that you're going to end up in a world where, it's another level of government control, right? And you're going to end up with scenarios, things that happen out there in the world where you say, gosh, why are they enforcing this law from 65 years ago? It's a law. You broke the law. You weren't supposed to do that. I am pro-human and I am pro-freedom. And that's why I choose to contribute to the Tari project, is because I believe that this project is pro-human and I think it's pro-freedom.